Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Well, thank you for calling, Tom. It's always nice to hear from her at this time of the Southern Hemisphere, especially when the frozen is always melted. And before that happened, I'd like to return to the previous discussion that we sometimes saw. 866-582-9933 is a number. Please feel free to call us during our normal hours of operation, which vary. Even though that number does not ring in the coastal time zone, we'll pay for the call. The telephone listen line number has changed, and our operators are standing by, ready. The usual 10% discounts apply until your order's taken, at which time our specially trained staff will assist you in redialing. And for an extra discount, please check your UPS mailbox for the flyer that we mailed out unaddressed in 2 weeks from now. Please tell your operator your discount code, George Bush, George, space, BUSH. And it will be sure to misunderestimate the increase directly to you. All products purchased directly from us always carry our exclusive 100% money-back guarantee without exceptions until we carry them. As you know, this broadcast offers double your money-back guarantee delineated in your membership terms and conditions, if and when written. And although we don't say it often enough, please find just one person to tune in so that we can definitively say that we have an audience. This concludes our Doublespeak announcement, of which only the telephone number was mentioned. Now on to tips from the book that I've been writing, which I'm almost certain has not been published. Okay, first tip. Harbor Freight Tools, 20% off coupons. You've seen them. Don't leave home without one. And tell your cashier that you want to keep the coupon, and then pass it on to the person behind you in line after you've completed your transaction, as long as he agrees to do the same for the person behind him. And what I'm saying is, if you have a 20% off coupon that you receive in the mail, or however you receive it, pass it on. And that's what I do. So when I'm at Harbor Freight, if I have to buy a tool and they have one that I think is going to be okay, I use my 20% off coupon. And sometimes I'll pass it on to a member of the family who's also in line, because you're only supposed to use it once. And I only use it once. Then I give it to someone else, like my son or my wife, who might use it again in the same line or in a different line. And I think it's always nice to save someone 20%. But let them know that you don't want them to keep that or throw it away, because the cashier will let you keep it, and have them pass it on to the person behind them, and so forth down the line. So, those 12 people in line all benefit from your 20% off coupon. And it's amazing how many people I have found will buy something like a rolling floor jack for an automobile, $100, $150, some $189, without tax, and they don't have the coupon. And they're stunned when you hand it to them. Really? Thanks so much. And before going to a gun show, copy and paste that $2 off coupon from the internet. And what I do, well, I don't go to gun shows very much anymore, but I would go to the internet and I would copy that that $2 off or that $1 off coupon multiple times onto the same word processing page. So I might get 2 up and 5 down. So meaning 1 across from another and 5 of them down the page. So that's like 10. Sometimes it's only 8. And then I would print them on my printer. I might print, 20 or so. And then I would cut them up and put them in my pocket. And then when I'm in line, there's always people behind you in line at one of these gun shows. You have to pay and cash. They like cash. They don't take anything but cash. I wonder why. I'm sure they report it, but I wonder why they only take cash. So when you are in line, you're going to see a guy in front of you and a guy behind you, and there's a whole bunch of people behind the guy behind you. Like 50. And so what I do is when the guy in front of me turns around, I go, "You have one of these?" "No." "Well, here. How about this one?" "Well, gee, thanks." And then I turned to the guy behind me and I said, "Do you have one of these?" "No." "Gee, thanks." And then I say, hold my spot in line for just a second. I want to give some more of these out. And I pass them down the line. And so I've just made 20 new friends. Now, it may or may not do anything in the future, but typically what I find is if you stay with them and make eye contact for a few seconds, they kind of remember you in the show. And they'll say hi to you again and again. And so you might actually make some temporary friends, about 20 of them. And then what happens is you'll see other people follow your lead, and they will print off coupons, not just for themselves, but for others. Okay, here's another tip. Back in the 1980s, I worked at the bank, a bank, actually worked at 3 banks. And the one I'm thinking of had it was the corporate headquarters for the bank. And it was a campus. It was like a college campus, except way nicer. Magnificent building, beautiful brick and glass. And it wasn't high rise. It was just 2 stories. The boardroom had hand-tooled leather on the doors. The doors were maybe, 10, 12 feet tall. They're imported from Italy. It's really, really impressive. And a former U.S. president was on the board of directors, Gerald Ford. And the security people wanted all of us to put these parking stickers that had the logo of the bank on our rear bumper in a specific location. And I didn't want to do it. I did not want to put one of these permanent stickers on my bumper for a lot of reasons. One, it let people know exactly where I worked. And I wasn't crazy about that anyway. Not that I didn't like the bank. I loved the bank. But I didn't want anyone who had a problem with the bank beating up my car in some parking lot somewhere. So I didn't put the sticker on my car. And the security people, would show up in uniform at my desk. And they'd say, "You don't have a sticker on your car." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you don't have a parking sticker, the one we gave you. It's not on your car." I go, "Huh. Really?" "Yeah." And they want to show me. So I leave my desk, I walk out to the parking lot, and sure enough, it's not there. And they want to know why. Because day after day, it's not there. So I get admonished for not having a parking sticker. And I'd always say the same thing. Well, I put it there. I peeled off the back of the sticker just as it says. I licked it, and it doesn't stay on. They don't work. And they laughed at me. Like, "Finelli, you're not supposed to lick them." And eventually they gave up. Now the lesson is, you can smile and not comply. So I had, at that time, I had a red English sports car. The only one probably in the entire state. Literally. It was a 1974 Lotus Europa. They only made a few of them. And there are even fewer of them in red. So I had my old Lotus, and by the way, they were really inexpensive at one time. Now, now they're like $100,000, but you used to be able to get them for a couple $1,000. Tip number 3, how I sometimes approach getting a refund for a defective product. Now, I did this yesterday at the Chinese factory outlet. So I was in line. I was about number 10 in line in the customer service line. And you know how when the people in front of you, they want to know who's behind them, right? So they kind of turn around. Well, I was in line, and the line was getting longer. I got maybe a couple people got behind. And the woman in front of me turned toward me, and I smiled and said, "You have bugs too?" And she was confused. And then I turned to the woman behind me, and I said, "You have bugs too?" And she was confused. So we passed the time talking about the bugs. And a few others in line heard the conversation. They were interested in exactly what bugs we were talking about and how this would play out when it was my turn to get to the customer service representative. So I slowly approached the customer service counter with a smile, when it was my turn. Next. And so I slowly approached. And when the customer service gentleman asked, "How can I help you?" I turned and I looked all around me, kind of like Columbo would do. I looked around me as if I'm pretty confused. And then I apologized for being late. Now, you realize there's a long line behind me, right? And it's taking me forever. I'm looking around. I'm trying to understand where I am. And then in detail, I slowly explained that this is all my fault. I never should have left him, our son, in the store. And this is what he did. See where it says bugs written in black magic marker on the 4 boxes of dehydrated potatoes and cheese? He bought these. And I didn't find out until a few days later when he was making them. We all stood around the pan, and they floated up to the surface. They stand out, against the white-colored milk. The bugs are black. I put some in the box for you. He used a half a quart of milk. So all these disjointed things I'm saying. And he decides that the sooner he gets me out of that line, the better everyone else is going to be. So the customer service representative saw the line was about 15 or more. And he was rushing me, asking for my receipt. No, he bought these, not me. I don't have a receipt. The bugs are still in there if you want to see them. Here's your cash refund. Thank you. Then I said, "The half a quart of milk?" Now we need a supervisor to figure out what to do. They never had a situation quite like this before. So they were talking, and it took about a minute for her to figure out what they were going to do about the half a quart of milk. And she said, "Give him a half a gallon of milk." So I said, "But he only used a half a quart." He said, "Just bring a half a gallon back here." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I said when we come back." Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to give us a call, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. So, as right after the gentleman, the customer service manager, said, "Here's your cash refund," he didn't ask me if I wanted a refund on a card. He wanted me out of there. And so I said, "Half a quart of milk?" So we needed a supervisor to figure out what to do, and then the supervisor had to think about it, and she said, "Give him a half a gallon of milk." Because they only sold in quarts, and quarts, half gallons, and gallons. So I said, just bring that half a gallon of milk back here, and we'll take care of it. And I looked confused again, and I looked around. I said, do you see this line? It's longer. I can't even see the end of it. He said, "Just skip the line and come right up here, okay?" "Thank you." So I went and I looked at the milk, and I got that half gallon of milk. But, they don't have those brown bags in the freezer section, and it was going to be about an hour and a half before I got home. So I was looking around the store and was having a tough time finding those brown, ice cream freezer type bags. They don't have them anymore. Walmart around here doesn't have them. Not even in the big city, Springfield. So I went to the produce department, and they have those bags on a roll. So I used about 5 of those, made air pockets around each bag, and then I used one of those twist ties, and then I double bagged it at the self-checkout, so it would approximate a freezer bag. Well, the funny thing is about this story, the funny thing is that the customer service representative didn't really know whether to be amused, smile, enjoy the act, or feel sorry for me. But I had fun, and even kept a straight face. But I believe that he couldn't hurry fast enough to give me a cash refund, mostly because it appeared that I was in no hurry. It appeared that I was confused, and I was apologetic for something that was not my fault. And I don't think he had ever seen all 3 of those things simultaneously, because most people are trying to get him to hurry up. And I had plenty of time. If it took 2 hours, that was okay with me, because I was enjoying the show. So what is the lesson there? The lesson is that I believe you can have fun doing something that is no fun. And I turned it into fun for me. And I said to Jason today, before the broadcast started, I said, Jason, I've been thinking about radio, and if I'm going to continue doing radio, I'm going to make it fun. Or I don't want to do it. So that's why I did the first opening piece. I asked him to fade down the intro 3x. So he faded down 3 times as fast. And I said, well, thank you for calling, Tom. It's always nice to hear from her. This time of the southern hemisphere. Especially when the frozen is always melted. Then I said, 866-582-9933 is a number. Please feel free to call during our normal hours of operation, which vary. And even though that number does not ring in the coastal time zone, we will pay for the call. The telephone listen line number has changed, and our operators standing by, ready. The usual 10% discounts apply until your order is taken, at which time our specially trained staff will assist you in redialing. And for an extra discount, please check your UPS mailbox for the flyer we mailed out, unaddressed, in 2 weeks from now. Please tell your operator discount code George Bush, and be sure, and it, meaning your operator, and it will be sure to underestimate the increase directly to you. George Bush has been quoted as saying, I'm always misunderestimated. There you go. We'll be right back. I received an email from one of our class, and it said, I'll just read part of it, just a few words. Vincent, I share your concerns, and this was about the broadcast the other day. I share your concerns. This could trigger a civil war. The term would be revolution. Revolution. Because it's the government that wants to take your Second Amendment rights, starting now, at this point, starting now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, with no grandfathering in of your ownership. So those are ex post facto laws. And what that means is, well, it was legal, but we changed our mind, and now the rules are changed. We changed them, And so what was legal is now no longer legal. And we've got new penalties. So although you did the right thing at one time, we've changed our mind and now it's the wrong thing. And we have enhanced penalties for you. Now, the opposite of that is amnesty. What was once illegal can become legal. Now, I'm okay with amnesty in some situations, oppressive laws, those kinds of things. But I'm not okay with them changing their mind, saying you can't buy or own or possess or have something that was legal at one time. Because we all changed our minds, and we want to beat you up. Robert in Kansas, welcome. You're on with me, Vin Finelli.
Good morning, Vincent. I had no idea what was going on in that intro, man. I was wondering. Kind of disturbing.
Why do you say that, Robert?
Well, I tuned in. I'm like, is this a rebroadcast? Am I hearing, is it the timing off? I didn't know what was going on. Just very confusing, but it was, as far as, you talk about doublespeak, that was great, Vince. I mean, it was pretty awesome what you did there. I don't think I could do that.
Well, I'm sure you could. And Robert, the reason I wanted to, but some people think I've lost my mind. And I have been saying to fellow broadcasters, I don't think people are paying attention. I think they are zoned out. And one example was when I was in that customer service line yesterday at the Chinese factory outlet, I talked to the gal behind me. And I said, hey, how are you? And she looked at me like she was dazed. And everyone in the line wanted to know who was around them, but they didn't want to talk to them. So the line was probably, 15 minutes long. Why not say hello, and pass the time pleasantly rather than just stand there trying to prevent you not looking at the person you're looking at so that person doesn't see that you're looking at them. And so you can avoid feeling uncomfortable. It's awful. So I always talk to people. And what I'm saying is we have changed. We're in our own little world. We don't want to bother with anybody else. Leave me alone. And it's not the way it used to be. So what I try to do is engage people around me, and I try to make it fun. And that's why when I said to the gal in front of me, you have bugs too? You have bugs too? She had no idea. And I said it that way. Of course she had no idea what I was talking about. And then she wanted to know, like I was whetting her appetite. What bugs? In these boxes of dried, freeze-dried potatoes or dehydrated. Yeah. Oh, and so I was telling her about this, and then she just couldn't wait to hear how this was going to play out. She thought this was going to be great. And I told her what I was going to do, and she kind of thought that was about the funniest thing she heard all day. But yeah, that was all doublespeak. What I was saying, in the intro part about discount code George Bush, and we'll be sure to misunderestimate the increase directly to you. And
it was good, Vince.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I told Jason that literally, if I'm going to do radio, if I'm going to continue to do it, I'm going to have fun doing it. And I'm probably going to throw this in every once in a while just for my own amusement. But I really don't think a lot of people are paying attention. Now, you were paying attention because it didn't make any sense to you.
Well, I knew you had talked about it with Rick Miller, so I knew I kind of was is this what he's doing? And then, once you get into it, I guess, yeah, I could tell. But initially when you came on and you were like, got off the phone with Tom and she was great or whatever, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I thought maybe I had missed something, but, you were talking about talking to people, Vince, and I think you come from, I'm younger than you come from a time, let's say, where it was the spoken word at all times. It didn't matter if it was in school or in work or in anything. You didn't have digital communication. People weren't emailing. They weren't texting. They weren't even a phone call, which is better than, a text message. You still don't get to see the person. Okay, there's a lot of communication that you probably know how to do that a lot of people have either been trained out of or conditioned out of, even people your age. If all they do is watch TV and communicate electronically, over the years, they forget how to talk to people too. So someone like you who's able to do that, it could be intimidating to people. It could be just something that they're not experiencing normally. So you come along and you are relaxed and you want to talk to people, and they're like, well, I'm not used to this. Because, like you say, times have changed, and we do need to talk to each other, so I'm glad you do that. I do that too, but then you also, I also know some people, they just don't want, if you try to talk to a woman, like in a platonic, friendly way, like, sometimes they respond just fine, but a lot of them are like, you're hitting on me. And it's like, well, no, I'm not. I don't know. Like, I'm not even interested in you in that way. Sometimes you can't be nice to people, Vince, because they take it the wrong way, men included. And so it's just a weird thing out there now where people, they think the TV is real and that you talking to them there in the store is the fake part. So that's what you're dealing with, Vince. It's just conditioning of our nation.
Yesterday, I mentioned I was at the Chinese factory outlet, and I had a little bit of time to spend while Mrs. Finelli was doing something else, and it was going to take her about a half an hour. She was looking at eyeglass frames, and she was talking about an eye exam and that kind of thing. And then she decided to have an eye exam, so I wasn't allowed in the room with her, so I had about a half an hour. So I was walking down the main aisle, and there was a guy sitting down on a bench. He had white hair, and he had a Vietnam veteran's hat on. So I walked up to him, and I had my one item in the cart, which was the half-gallon of milk all bagged up. And I said, you mind if I chat with you? That was my opening line. I said, no. So we were just chatting for a while, and after a couple minutes, I said my draft number was 211, and he said he didn't have a draft number. He was conscripted. And so a few minutes later, I said to him, so do you know why we were there? He said, I have no idea. And then a few minutes later, another guy came up and saw us talking, and my new friend had his Vietnam veteran hat on. Guy came up to him, same age, as the two of us, and shook his hand and said, welcome home. I thought that was such a nice gesture. Welcome home. Now, these two guys never met each other. Okay. The guy I was talking to at first was from Arkansas. This other guy was from Missouri. And so the three of us were talking. And then after a couple more minutes, I said to the third man to join us, so do you know why we were there? I said, no idea. I said, I was talking with a general. His name is Vallely. And I asked General Vallely, who was involved in the investigation of the Benghazi scandal with the Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, praise the Lord, Hillary Clinton. And I asked him, do you know why we were there? And he didn't know either. Is that interesting or what? So we had this wonderful chat. And yes, you can talk with people you don't know. When it was all over, and his wife came over to join him, and we all parted ways, shook hands, and it was the nicest thing. It really was. And yes, you can do that. And you don't need a cell phone to do it.
Well, Vince, imagine being a veteran and you live in Virginia now, and they're going to tell you maybe you fought in Vietnam, and now they're going to say, well, we're going to come in, how we armed you and trained you and all that other stuff. Now we're going to come and take your guns from you. Imagine being an American soldier where your rights are going to be there's people saying that, yeah, you will do this. They're going to fire the police, fire the sheriffs. It's like, my goodness, people, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And it's just, I don't know what's going to happen, Vincent. It's crazy. If you know anyone in Virginia, Vincent, this is the time, this is the place to be in contact with them and just say, hey, if they take that state, what is it to stop them from setting that precedent and then just taking the rest of them? It's crazy, Vince.
Robert, that's exactly what I said, I think Wednesday. I think I said that Wednesday, that I'm very, very concerned about. Actually, I said it for the last 2 days. And I explained how many counties are in Virginia, and most of them have voted at the county level and some city levels. No, I'm sorry, just at county level, voted themselves Second Amendment sanctuary counties. However, if it's rural versus city, it's clear as could be that where the high density population is, those are the cities that are not sanctuary Second Amendment cities. Now, if you think about this, there shouldn't have to be anything like this at all. The Second Amendment should be pervasive throughout the entire United States. And it is the United States, not the United State, right? So I told the story in the last 2 days about how I was traveling in the Commonwealth of Virginia on a 2-lane road. And I had my mom in the car, and my Mrs. Finelli was in the car, and sometimes our children. And we'd go to visit my dad and spend the day at the hospital because he was in a horrific car crash. Guy fell asleep at the wheel, crashed into him 55 miles an hour each, and he was really banged up, and he was there for months. Well, I made this trip every day, 7 days a week, and sometimes would stay overnight. And there was a gauntlet, and there was a state police gauntlet, lights, red, blue, tow trucks, cars in the road, on the side of the road. And when it was my turn, it was license and registration. And when I said, why? That state trooper wanted to yank me out of the... It's just me today, and Robert in Kansas has joined in, and we're talking about the battleground in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the corrupt Commonwealth of Virginia. And what I was saying is many years ago, almost 2 decades ago, actually over 2 decades ago, I was on this 2-lane road, 1 lane coming, 1 lane going with my family to visit my dad in the hospital as I did every day. And this one day, this was a back road, there was a gauntlet, and there were police lights ahead, a lot of cars in the road, a lot of cars on the side of the road, both directions, and tow trucks, a lot of tow trucks. And so I stood back with my car, and I waited my turn, and I moved up very slowly, and this large, imposing man with the big hat and the badge and the handgun and all the tools and the radio said to me, license and registration. And I said, why? And he was livid. And he was about to pull me out of my car window and pummel me right then and there. And I guess he composed himself and told me that I needed to produce it. And eventually, he said, this is a license and registration and insurance checkpoint. So that told me that all those tow trucks were for people who either didn't have a license, a registration, or an insurance card. And there were a lot of them. And these guys were holding up traffic, just making sure we're all safe. And I turned to my wife after it was our turn to proceed, and I said, we're moving. This is nuts. And I saw this coming. And I even saw in a little hamlet where I lived of 500 people in the central part of Virginia, about 50 miles off the North Carolina line, the middle of nowhere. Nothing happening there. So little happening there, the war of northern aggression went around this area. Seriously. And it was just farmland. We had, Mrs. Finelli and I were coming back from an event in the county. It was probably 9 o'clock at night. No one was on the road. I mean, very few people, maybe us, maybe one other car. And there were the police. And they had a checkpoint. It was, the sheriff. He had a checkpoint. Everybody knew who I was in the county. I mean, literally, they did. And we were on the news all the time, with our computer technology. I mean, we were on the Virginia's news network. We were on the 6 o'clock news, as features. They were talking about us all the time. We were in the newspaper. So they knew who we were. They could recognize us through the windshield. And they were going to stop us. And I thought, I'm going to try this. So they're telling me to pull over. And I just waved and said, hey, good evening. And I kept going. And you know what? No shots were fired. So, Robert, to discuss what we're talking about, in the Commonwealth, the corrupt Commonwealth of Virginia, there are 86 of the 95 counties that have resolved to be Second Amendment sanctuary locations, counties. What is not part of that are the following areas, cities. So these are not Second Amendment sanctuary cities. Alexandria, Charlottesville, Danville, Emporia, Fairfax, Falls Church, Fredericksburg, Hampton, Harrisonburg, Hopewell, Lexington, Manassas Park, Newport News, Petersburg, Portsmouth, Richmond, Salem, Suffolk, and Williamsburg. Those cities have not joined in to support the Second Amendment. And there are 3 counties that have not joined in as well: Arlington, Clark County, and Fairfax County. Now, who lives in those counties? Well, Fairfax is a bedroom community for people who work in the District of Criminals. Same thing with Arlington. Same thing with Fredericksburg as a city. So
those are probably the illegal immigrant sanctuary cities and counties that you just named. They probably have no gun rights, but illegal aliens can come there and live, and commit crime and not pay taxes, things like that.
Several years ago, I told a story about how I was in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I was at a Chinese factory outlet. I was with our family, and I saw this white police car slowly driving up and down the Walmart parking lot. I don't have enough time to tell the whole story before the break, but I'll start it and I'll finish the story. And Robert, if you'd like to hold on and stay with me, I'd love it.
I'll hold Vince, and let's talk about first guns too.
Yeah, first guns. I'd love to do that because I know you know. So this police car had cameras on every corner and on the roof. So 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 2 on the rooftop looking at the sides with a license plate scanner years ago with a proprietary wireless network to read the license plate and determine who was out of registration. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I just wanted to finish the story, and here it is. So I was in Fredericksburg at the Chinese factory outlet parking lot, and there was this white car with 6 cameras very slowly driving through the middle of the lane, weaving in and out, all these lanes. And so Mrs. Finelli was there, the family was there, and I said, I'll be right back, as we were going into the store. I said, I want to make a new friend. And so I walked up to this guy. He was in uniform. And I said, wow, this is really cool. What is it? And he thought that I was his new best friend. And I said, wow, got transmitters. Is this like cellular? No, we've got our own network. Wow, what does it do? Well, it reads license plates. It checks them for, being current. And instantly tickets are issued if you are parked there and you don't have current registration, or all kinds of defects. It's a ticket-generating apparatus piloted by a cop. That was years ago. And that re-cemented that we really made the right decision getting out of the corrupt Commonwealth of Virginia. Robert in Kansas was with us, and David's on hold. David, we're going to talk about guns. I have a suggestion for you. If you'd like to call back at the bottom of the hour, we can do that because I know you want to talk about guns too. So that's a suggestion, or you can just hold. Your choice. I can see you on the call screen. You can take your choice. Robert, you want to talk about first guns. Please do.
I do, Vince, and I want to disagree with you and the other instructors that have commented on the subject. What I think is probably the best gun, the first gun, and what I'm talking about, I guess, ideally would be like a 12-year-old boy, okay, someone who's never shot, and that'd be the first gun you give them. Now, do you want to give them a 12-gauge? Maybe not. That might be a little much, right? But it'd be a shotgun would be the gun that I would give them. And the reason is it is really the simplest modern weapon that is mass-produced the way it is. And it has a smooth bore, very few moving parts, very large tolerances, things like that. And it's a close-range long gun, okay? So you're moving away from the rifle, away from the pistol. And what it requires, just in its own nature about the weapon, is a type of shooting. Okay, so when you're looking down a sight with a rifled weapon, and you have all the time in the world, and you can hit the target, that's one type of shooting, right? But then you've experienced real life training with Mike Maw there, and you know that in a situation, you're not necessarily aiming and waiting, and you're fighting with guns is what you're doing. You're not necessarily shooting the way that you would shoot with a rifled weapon at the range. So with a shotgun, usually if you're hunting bird, you're hunting whatever, what happens is you're walking along and the quail kicks up and you raise the weapon and shoot. You only have so much time. It's a close range weapon, and it teaches a type of shooting. And it's very intrinsic to what real situations would be like, but you're hunting and doing things that are like that. Also in a shotgun, you're dealing with, and a lot of people say, well, I don't like this aspect of it, but this is exactly why I recommend it. It is a large round with a big kick. Okay, so that boy pulls that trigger and boom, right? I mean, it's a shotgun. It's not a pistol. It's not a 223, whatever. It's none of that. It's a big old shotgun in terms of that physicality of the weapon. And what it does is it educates on a very deep level to that boy that he has a powerful weapon in his hand. It's not a toy. This is not like anything he's ever dealt with. This is a very powerful thing, and there's just that intrinsic nature of it that's different than shooting like a 5.56, one that's souped up, really nice rifle. You put it on you set it on a sandbag and you're shooting it, you can barely feel it. And you might think, well, this is like a video game, right? But that power of that shotgun will snap a kid out of any misunderstanding of what this is an extremely powerful, dangerous thing that has to have a different level of respect than anything that you've probably dealt with before in your young life, right? So there's what that's really good about a shotgun. That's like the best thing is that you have to respect it. They're powerful weapons, and so that's what I recommend. And then just the way that you work into it, you probably pistol shooting, right, is probably the most difficult. So you would want to go from the long gun to more of a rifle, and then eventually you come back to close range with the, maybe personal protection, the pistol. But I think working in through the shotgun is, it's all personal experience, right? So obviously I got a shotgun when I was very young, and, my dad, he showed me, all the stuff, don't do this, don't do that. And so for me, I guess it could just be me personally, but then really thinking about it, and I've been in the military and I've shot almost every weapon system that you can think of that the U.S. military has, right? So, or at least one that you can actually carry around. And so I know a lot about weapons and how it all, how you progress up to, right, like a machine gun, right? That is completely different than any other type of shooting you'll ever do, right? So, but it's moving up to through those ranks of weaponry. Really the shotgun being almost like a modern day musket, the simplest form. If the kid does mess it up, I mean, it's not a $2,000 rifle or something like that where, you'd be dealing with, a cost. So, I hope people would consider that, if they're going to, introduce their kids to firearms, and maybe a 20 gauge or a 410, much smaller even. I think I got a 20 gauge is what I got, and it was a really good way to learn, because you learn, like when you were with Mike Ma, right? You're pointing, the quail pops up, you got to shoot the quail right then. And that there's very intrinsic educational properties to the weapon that with a pistol or a rifle, it's just it's a different game. Those are actually more sophisticated weapons, right? They're rifled, and they, you can reach out at a distance with a rifle. And so in my opinion, that's a way up from a shotgun in terms of the level of shooter. Even though it's very easy to do, right? It's just a very, as far as the kick and the physicality, women can shoot a 223 much easier than a 20 gauge, right? If it's a small woman, so there is comfort levels there. But a woman, right? If a woman's never shot anything, and in some way you want her to know what she's dealing with, and the same sort of lessons would apply. And so I hope that people consider a shotgun for their first gun.
Okay, Robert, we don't have any disagreement, none whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I trained our boys and daughter in a very, very similar way. Our son, I'll just talk about our son, for example. When he was 6 years old, I introduced him to long guns and handguns. And the reason I did that was because I didn't want him to go to Johnny's house and have Johnny say, wow, will you see what my daddy's got, and pull out a handgun and someone get killed. I didn't want that to happen. So I taught all of our children what a rifle, a pistol, and a shotgun could do. First, we watched some videos on firearm safety. And we watched them again. And then I taught them. And then we handled the firearms. And then we practiced. And we practiced some more. And then I thought they needed to see and hear and feel the presence of someone who they might respect. And this was a different time. This was 20 years ago. Actually, more than 20 years ago. And I invited, I was doing some computer work for for Sheriff's Department. And I knew some of the deputies. And I asked them if they'd come on over and reinforce the training about safety with our children. And they did. And they were stunned when the deputies pulled out their handguns and said, well, why don't you try this? They were stunned that our children could make, the target dance or the can dance. Stunned. They'd never seen anyone that young shoot that well before. So, as far as the shotgun, all of our children have handled and shot shotguns when they were very, very young. So, I agree with you. I absolutely do. And they started out with a 410. And yes, the kick of a 410 for a young person really makes an impression. And our 6-year-old, one of our boys, said to me he wanted to try shooting an M1 carbine. I said, are you sure? I said, this is going to be something else. He said, oh, yes, Dad, I want to do that. I said, okay, we're going to put one round in it, just one. And we sat him down. He put that M1 carbine up to his shoulder, pointed it downrange at the target, squeezed off the round, and immediately started crying. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, Vince, I mean, yeah, I don't know. 6 is, I mean, that's pretty young for me. You talking about the lesson of safety with young people, that's very good and necessary. I appreciate that. Now, letting, for me anyway, letting a child play with it or even have a handgun, shooting it, even if it's a controlled, I just don't, it needs to be somebody older for me before I let them handle handguns. They're just so dangerous, I think, for kids to be even shooting like at the range with supervision compared to a long gun. And so I do want to make that point is that they are to kids. I mean, even like if you have someone who's weak or old, just see someone holding that in their hand and it's shooting it like that instead of it hitting their shoulder. It is just I've seen so many things happen that I basically just won't let kids even touch a handgun if I'm around.
All right. This is a different time. So let me put out this disclaimer. Class, do not do what I did. Do not, under no circumstances, do what I did. Okay? That was a completely different time. Our children were farm children. We lived in the middle of nowhere. There was only one of us at a time shooting. Okay? It wasn't like a big class. It was one-on-one. It was dad and child. And that rifle wasn't going anywhere except downrange, and we had a range. And we practiced dry firing a lot, okay, before a live round was put in it. And we didn't start out with the .30 carbine. We didn't do that. We started out with a .22, and then we moved up to a shotgun. Robert in Kansas is with us. And Robert, I have shot a lot of different rifles, pistols, shotguns, different gauges, different calibers, 50 caliber BMG, and also handheld machine guns, light machine guns. And I do not advocate spraying bullets. I don't advocate that at all. I believe in conserving ammunition. And I believe that you should never own a gun if you don't intend to defend yourself to the full extent of even killing someone, if you have to, if your life is threatened, if it's them attacking you. What is your feeling on that?
I agree with you, Vince, and yeah, absolutely, man. As men, right, you have to deal with maybe situations you don't ever want to have to deal with in life. You told a story, I think, about your grandpa. Might have been your dad. But some people chased them down these roads, and they kept turning, and they wouldn't leave you guys alone. And your dad got out, and he realized he's dealing with nature, right? With somebody who you have to threaten to get you to leave you alone, right? Like you're dealing with men who are pursuing you. And so sometimes, Vince, we're put in these situations, and like you say, this is for protection, this is for defense of you and your family and that which you love. So I completely agree. And yeah, man, if the other instructor wants to come on, Vince, I'm pretty much done with the first gun thing. I want to reiterate real quick though that my opinion, it would be you go from a shotgun to a rifle, another long gun, and then finally to a pistol being the most advanced form of shooting whenever you're bringing people through that process. That's in my opinion, that's the best way to go. Because handgun shooting, it's very difficult to do well. But yeah, Vince, you're absolutely right. It can be unfortunate. We used to carry swords and bows and arrows, and technology has advanced, and you still have to, if the wolf pack comes, Vince, right? It's not doesn't have to be people. Nature is what it is. If the wolf pack comes around and it's hungry, it's not going to ask you if you can be fed upon, right? You either kill the wolf pack or it's going to kill you. And so there's it's nature. There's that conflict there that I think a lot of people, they kind of forget about it when they live in such a peaceful, easy society. They don't realize
Robert,
that. Yeah.
Robert, hold that thought for just a second. Seriously.
Okay.
Hold that thought for just a second. Last night, middle of the night, wolves were howling within, 100 feet of our back door. Literally, just as you said, wolf pack. And so what did I do? I had a 12-gauge pump shotgun at the ready. Outside. I was ready to defend our farm against an invading wolf pack. Last night. Absolutely true. What am I supposed to do? Call the sheriff? Well, yeah.
No.
Yeah. So we are armed, and what you said, and the reason I interrupted you, I didn't want to be rude, but I wanted to say you are absolutely, positively right, and it happens, and it happens here, and for those of you who think I'll just move to the country, get me a few cows, raise a garden, yeah, I applaud you for doing that, but it's not easy. You will have to be ever vigilant. You will have to be always prepared. Did I go to sleep last night thinking that I was going to be engaging a pack of wolves? Hardly. But was I ready? Yes. Robert, very quickly. First gun for a lady. Handgun. What's it going to be?
The first handgun, like what they have on the market now?
No, whatever it is to carry. What do you recommend, generally speaking?
Here's what I'll say. Okay, here's what I'll say. If you're a woman and you want to pull something out of your purse and have it go boom if somebody's trying to get you, because that's what us men are thinking of, we want you to be safe, it's going to be just a revolver, a nice, 5, 6, 7, don't buy a cheap gun ever. Buy a nice revolver that's going to work every time you pull the trigger and that requires the least amount of training. Now, there is if you get a regular handgun, I suggest the SIG P365. Just make sure you get plenty of training with it, and you should be fine. It's a great weapon.
Robert in Kansas, thank you so much for calling in and sharing your wealth of experience. David's going to be on with us next. Thank you, Robert. Got 2 more segments, and we have David in Illinois on with us, and Kyle is patiently waiting. So we'll try to split the time. David, your thoughts. Welcome.
How you doing? You brought up about your situation dealing with what happened last night as a pack of wolves. I've always told my wife and other individuals that ask me what to do, I said, you don't think of them as human beings. Think of them as a rabid, wild animal. That's what you have to do. For me, I'll never forget all the case files I've seen. I remember the photos, so I don't have a problem with it. But other people haven't witnessed that type of situation. So
I was at the ready with a 12 gauge. What would you have done?
Yeah, I would have done 12, but I have access to thermal and night vision, so I would I'd be ready with that first. I've been in situations where I didn't have that, and I had somebody trying to break in our house, and my wife was there, and she's like, they're trying to come in. I said, just calm down, relax. The dogs will get them first. If the shepherds don't have them, then I'll deal with them. They can't do nothing till they get in the house. And I said, you're safe. Just calm down. Just relax. She knows when I'm calm in a situation like that, she knows to listen, because those situations I just get real calm. I don't have a problem.
Yeah. No screaming, class. No screaming. That's like the worst thing that can happen. Just be very calm.
And the thing I would say about the people do need to learn and teach. I don't have a problem with you teaching your son at that range, but you did the wise thing, just like I was taught by Marine Corps instructors and Green Beret sniper. One round at a time, whatever you gotta know the capability and with the child. Some children you could teach younger, some you can't. You just gotta evaluate.
My instructor, I've had a lot of instructors. Mike Ma was one, but before Mike Ma, I was trained by a Marine scout sniper. And kind of thing that he would do with our boys was they would be taking a long shot with a precision rifle, and he would take off his cover, which we would know as his cap, and he'd be making all kinds of noise, standing around them, swatting them in the head. Now, don't do it. class, do not do anything that I'm talking about. This is deadly dangerous. Okay. But, that's what he would do. And, after he knew that our boys were quite proficient, he would make all kinds of noise, kind of like a drill sergeant would make. And then our boys, the first time, they'd look at him and say, it's really hard to concentrate when you're doing this. And he'd say, well, you think in war, everybody's going to wait for you? That kind of thing. So we were trained under some extreme conditions. David, first handgun for a lady. In the purse, on the person, what would it be?
I'd say revolver. I doubt. I have a revolver. I believe in the revolvers are reliable. I do disagree with the stub nose. I've observed too many officers and things have, not as much control. I prefer at least a 3-inch barrel with vent rib in the shroud. Let the weapon do most of the work. And an exposed hammer. I do not like these new revolvers without an exposed hammer.
We're almost on the same page. For concealment, 2-inch barrel seems to work for Mrs. Finelli. Hammer, hammer's great. Pull the hammer back and you get a much more accurate shot. First one out of the gate with a revolver. Much more, even a pistol.
Yeah, I prefer 1911s too.
We're exactly on the same page there. Exactly. All right. Now, what brand revolver do you like?
Smith. My first ones were Python and a King Cobra Colts, but they're a little bit out of price range.
They're top of the line. Top of the line.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll let you go talk to you. Hey, I will tell you one other question, Stephen, real quick. You're the first person I met last night in 20-some-odd years that knew what a 38 Super was. You impressed me last night. Me last night.
I don't think I don't carry one.
No.
38
nice
Super
target.
is.
You're lucky to find one.
Okay. Well, we're talking about a Colt 1911 and 38 Super.
Nice.
It's a heck of a round. And very, very pricey, but they didn't used to be. You used to be able to buy one for about $650. Not too often can you find one in good condition for, that little. Now we're probably close to $2,000.
The Green Beret sniper I grew up with, he has a Colt Python locked up with single-digit serial number. He has it locked up in the vault. Never fired. But
quick question for you.
Yes.
Have you ever shot a Winchester Model 52 rifle, target rifle? Have you ever shot one of those Winchester Model 52?
No, the Marine Corps teachers we used. They had some very nice. I've never found the nice bolt actions that we used, but I've never. I only own Winchester shotguns. I'm a 30 cal FN FAL guy. So
okay. Well, good.
So yeah,
David, we'll have to do this again. And by the way, thank you for calling in last night. I saw on the call screen that David from Illinois, and back channel I asked Steve Elkins to let me introduce you. So, and what I'm talking about, class, is Steve Elkins and I filled in for John Statmiller last night on Republic Broadcasting Network.
Well, I didn't want to get him upset and cause any technical difficulties like a lot of times when we call and talk to your show. So,
David, thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that was David in Illinois, USA Prepares Instructor. Joining us now, Kyle in Montana, another USA Prepares Instructor. Kyle, welcome.
Good morning, Vince. I don't disagree with anything those guys have said. I really don't. When George and I were kind of talking, we were talking in terms of ladies. And personally, I was kind of assuming, and I realize that's probably not probable the case in a lot of instances. I was personally assuming that a woman would get some training, and if she had some training, and had learned and been around guns enough to be able, in my opinion, which she shouldn't even be carrying unless she has that, then I suggest a semi-automatic because of the extra carry capacity. I don't disagree with anything the guys were saying. The Robert from Kansas is a little different. I mean, I don't know how he was raised necessarily, but I was raised similar to you, Vince. My dad was a Marine Corps sniper as well. I mean, I know your dad wasn't, but you've been around him, but my dad was. And the very thing you were mentioning there about taking a shot and having him move around and fidget and stomp and do kind of funny things and make us shoot, my dad did that from when we were real little. And again, like you said, don't anybody do what we did, but my kids were raised on a farm too, and there was guns everywhere. We literally had where we could shoot, if coyotes were coming in on our goats or the chickens or anything like that, or bears or whatever, it didn't matter. We had 2 or 3 different guns, and my kids from 6 years old knew how to handle and shoot all of them. I mean, they were started at 6. By probably 7 or 8, they were proficient. It's kind of a funny thing. You mentioned the accuracy and how the kids were trained, My son's been very, very well trained on handguns because I've taught him everything that I know, and then he's taken that even further. But they were out shooting with one of his best friends just over this holiday season, just plinking. And his best friend's dad is a deputy sheriff, and they're offhand trying to take their ARs and 10/22s and blinking a bunch of and my son's not shooting at this point. And they're trying to hit this little bitty part of a chunk of wood sticking up off of a log, my son said, at about 45 to 50 yards, and they're not hitting it. And so my son pulls out his Springfield XD in 10 millimeter, and he says, okay, and so he takes a shot and destroys it in one shot. Everybody else turns around and their jaws drop and they're open, they're looking at him like, how did you do that? I'm not trying to brag just for that purpose. I'm trying to say if kids can be trained and taught and shown these things and nurture them with a gun, don't just turn them loose. That's the stupidest thing you can do. Be there, be with them when they shoot. My dad was confident in turning me loose at 9 years old with a single shot 22, and I hunted frogs and snakes and stuff when we were little kids and rode with it on my back on the bicycle for miles to hunt different things. My dad was confident that I was never going to shoot anything where there was a farmhouse in back of it, or I knew what was behind it. And it's just kind of stuff that I grew up with because my dad taught and trained that and nurtured that into me. And I did the same thing with my kids. They always are looking beyond the target. They're always knowing where, what they're shooting. They're not ignorant of anything. My dad he had a saying. He said, an unloaded gun is just a really bad club. And so it was just, these things are important to know. And it's too bad, in my opinion, that we have gotten so far away from the agricultural upbringing of our forefathers.
You mentioned you weren't sure, I believe, what my dad was. My dad was in the U.S. Army in World War II, and he was a first sergeant. So he had some experience in combat and fighting. So he was my original trainer. And then I was trained by a Marine Scout sniper who killed a lot of people in Vietnam. And then, lots of practice in between those two. And then Mike Ma, and then some more training. And when we were talking about the first gun for a woman, I still believe that a revolver is the way to go. Because in most cases, women don't shoot as much as often as men do. And it's harder for them to pull back the slide. So that's why I recommend a revolver. We'll be right back with Kyle. Class, we've got a few more minutes of the broadcast. And before it ends, I wanted to say thank you to Kyle and David and Robert for volunteering to share their experiences and knowledge with us today and previously. I'm very serious about that. And it's wonderful to have such wonderful friends and instructors here at USA Prepares. I wanted to share something with you, Kyle and class. Years ago, we had a meetup in Springfield, Missouri. And I had a concealed carry weapons permit, and so did Mrs. Finelli. Went through the training. And the training ran between $100 and $150 per person in Springfield, Missouri. I was livid at the outrageous cost for an 8-hour class. And so if you had 20 people in the class, it was $150 times 20. It's an outrageous gouging that was happening by instructors. And so I decided that I would hold a USA Prepares concealed carry class. And I hired a guy who was qualified to do it. And we charged $65, typically less than half. And with no profit to me nor reimbursement to me. And in Missouri, it's an 8-hour event where you have classroom activity followed by, at the range, qualifying, you have to hit the target X number of times at X number of feet. And you can use any handgun you choose. Most people use a .22 long rifle. And that's what we used. And here's what happened. Not everybody who went to the firing range was able to pull the trigger on the handgun to qualify. I'm very serious. Some of the senior citizens, the ladies who were with us, were unable to do that. So they went through the training, yep, got it, I've got it, understand, and couldn't pull the trigger. So if you think that 100% of people who have never shot a handgun are going to be able to pick it up and squeeze the trigger, that's not correct. I'm very serious. So, Kyle, that is why I've recommended that if you're thinking about going forward with defending yourself, you go to a gun show and you pick them up with permission. You handle them, make sure they're unloaded, and see if you can handle it. Because some triggers are tough, especially on large caliber revolvers. And they're supposed to be. For your safety.
Absolutely. It is so funny, Vince. I already had it in my mind talking about the revolver pull of the trigger. It is just incredible how you and I think along the same line so many times. If your wife or girlfriend or whoever, daughter, is going to carry a revolver, she should practice that thing in single action and be proficient with it without being able to pull the hammer back. Because those things, many of them, I know exactly what you're talking about. I went through a class as well, and one of the ladies in the class could not pull. She was definitely going to get a revolver. That's what the instructor talked her in, but she tried 3 of them and could not pull the trigger right to where she was anywhere. She could do it, but it was like putting it down and lifting weights. I mean, it was pointed at her feet and pulling everything she had to be able to pull the trigger. And it's like, so in some respects, she was sort of stuck with a semi-automatic weapon because the triggers are so much easier. She could shoot the instructor's 1911. She could shoot his. He had a SIG also, in 350. I can't remember what it was now. 9mm, where that's neck down from a 357. 357 SIG is what it was. Anyway, she could shoot that, but she could not pull the triggers. She wouldn't even be on the target as well. It's just very important. There's so much, like you said, it's the same thing about farming and everything else. There is so much that plays into making a decision to live the kind of a lifestyle that you live and that I have lived and still live. There's so many things to this, so many facets to it that you could talk about it for the rest of your life. And I'm still learning. I mean, I know you're still learning. You come up with things all the time. We just have to be students all the time, and learn.
Well, all of us in this class, and I use the term, I believe appropriately for what we do, that we are teaching a class. All of us are students, and some of us have risen to become instructors, but the instructors are still students because we never stop learning. And I'm looking forward to watching more of a video that I'd like to assign as homework. But class, I want you to consider watching The Walking Dead and Jericho and Survivors, the BBC 1976-77 version. Kyle, thanks so much for being with us.